Israel's ceasefire with Hezbollah potentially in jeopardy less than 48 hours after it was announced. Lebanon says 2 are hurt after Israeli forces launched a strike on a number of southern towns. This is in response to what Israel says were actions that violated the truce. Here with the reaction is former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. Mr. Secretary, thank you for joining us this morning. We look at this and we say, you can't make it 2 days in a ceasefire. This is not going in the right direction. What are your thoughts on it?
Well, thanks for having me on. Look, I'm unsurprised that the ceasefire hasn't held even for just a couple days. This conflict's been going on a long time. Hezbollah didn't agree as part of the ceasefire to give up their goal. Their goal is the destruction of Israel.
Yeah.
It was almost certain that their intention would be to go continue this conflict. That's what we, I think, have seen. I hope it gets back to a more peaceful situation so these Israeli citizens that live in the northern part of Israel can get back home. But I'm also confident that the Israeli Defense Forces know this as much as I do. They're going to do the things that are necessary to protect the Israeli people. But for the United States to have put this pressure on Israel, to have signed this deal, which almost certainly will prove not constructive in actually continuing to allow the Israelis to do what they need to take down Hezbollah, lock, stock, and barrel. I regret that, and I'm unsurprised by what we've seen in the last 48 hours. I expect you'll continue to see this kind of conflict.
Yeah, you really kind of answered my next question, which is where is this pressure for a ceasefire coming from? And it seems like the Biden administration, maybe they're trying to claim a small victory before he gets out of office. Maybe it's a genuine attempt to calm what is turning into a multi-front war. Where is the Biden administration as opposed to what the incoming Trump administration on this conflict in Israel?
Kevin, I think everyone's playing to the Trump administration now. I think both sides were entered into the ceasefire with some idea of what's coming next from President Trump, which will be enormous pressure on the Iranian regime. That's the difference. The Biden administration has been trying to get the Israelis to stop defending themselves for now over a year. There are still hostages, American hostages even, Kevin, held in Gaza by the Iranians today. They're proxy Hamas, holding them directly.
Yeah.
This ceasefire in the north is a Biden administration's last-ditch attempt to say, see, look, we did something. We solved a problem,
Yeah.
frankly, a problem that they created the conditions for, sort of like the arsonist putting the fire out. But make no mistake about it, the conditions haven't changed. The Iranians are still trying to destroy Israel and the United States of America. This is but one small front in a bigger conflict, which will require the United States to support the Israelis in their efforts to diminish Iran's capacity to commit terror around the world. That's what this is really about, Kevin.
Well, what's happening in the Middle East is not even the only war that we're worried about. Obviously, what's happening in Ukraine is potentially a much larger concern. This is President Putin talking about the Biden administration and the incoming Trump administration. Let's listen.
It's possible that the current administration wants to create difficulties for the future administration. That is also a possibility. But in my view of the newly elected president, he's quite a clever and experienced man. I think he will find a solution, given that he has tackled such a challenge as reclaiming the White House.
Okay, take the partisan politics out, right? The left will say, well, that's proof that they're cozying up and things like that. If we just look at what's happening, so Ukraine uses American-made missiles further into Russia than previously thought they would or could or were allowed to. In return, Russia fires back. My question is there any chance that President Zelensky is trying to bait the U.S. into this war before Biden leaves office?
Oh, I don't think that's likely. I think what's really happening is both leaders, President Zelensky and Putin, are both trying to create the conditions where they have more leverage as these negotiations begin, as this conversation, frankly, has already started. President Biden is largely irrelevant to this conflict in Europe today. It's already President-elect, former President Trump, who is driving the process there in Europe. I think they're both trying to gain leverage. They're both trying to be in a better position when the conversations begin about how to create peace there. They know that during the 4 years where I was in office and President Trump was in charge, they know that we had created a deterrence model that had actually worked for the Ukrainian people. We didn't have Ukrainians being killed every day. We didn't have what you've seen in the last 48 hours, massive missile attacks on the Ukrainian energy infrastructure. They know this is the new sheriff coming back, and they're both trying to get in a better spot to get a better outcome when that happens.
Yeah, President Trump said he could solve these conflicts even before he gets into office. I hope and pray he does. Secretary Mike Pompeo, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you all. Have a good day.
Israel conducted strikes in southern Lebanon after accusing Hezbollah of violating the ceasefire agreement, less than 48 hours after its initiation. Former U.S. Secretary of State expressed skepticism about the ceasefire sustainability, citing Hezbollah's continued goal of Israel's destruction and ongoing tensions. The Israeli Defense Forces, IDF, are expected to take actions to protect northern Israeli citizens despite the pressure from external parties. The Biden administration's involvement in brokering the ceasefire was criticized as counterproductive, with claims that it hinders Israel's efforts against Hezbollah. The ceasefire is perceived as a U.S. attempt to claim a diplomatic win amidst a broader regional conflict involving Iran, Israel, and Hezbollah, with lingering issues such as hostages and terror networks. Discussions on how current and incoming U.S. administrations are navigating complex Middle Eastern conflicts, including links to the Ukraine war and Russia's strategies. Both Ukrainian President Zelensky and Russian President Putin are maneuvering to strengthen their positions ahead of anticipated peace talks. Former U.S. official highlighted the deterrence model implemented during Trump's presidency as effective in curbing conflicts, contrasting it with recent escalations in both the Middle East and Ukraine.